Thank you for joining us. We're very excited to have you interested in our NPA mini grant program. And we are actually kicking off our session, our grant program for this year that we're in, 2024-25. So my name is Lynson Beaulieu. I am actually the chair of the Arts and Culture Commission, both the commission and the Public Art Advisory Committee. And we have had a very good year. We have been working on, we also have Winifred, who's the Arts and Culture Manager. We're going to have someone from the city manager's office who's going to come talk to us about the budget and our contract approval process. We want to make sure people are familiar with that if they decide to apply for a grant. And so that's my welcome and my introductions. And so I'm supposed to talk a little bit about the background of the NPA mini grant. I've actually been a commissioner since 2019. So I have been on application review panels since 2019, reading through grant applications from people in the community. We get excited every year because people are so creative, and we've had a lot of wonderful projects over the years. So one of the things that I'm supposed to talk about on the agenda is the types of projects. So really, you have a wide range of choices. We look at visual arts, we look at the performing arts, we look at music, we look at dance applications, we look at applications that combine art and literacy. So really, it's a wide open field for people to imagine the kinds of public art projects that they might design and propose to us for our review. So we've had people doing films, videos, historical work. We've had work coming out of the museums. We have a retrospective coming up of one of our local artists, famous artists here in the Point Richmond area, that the Richmond Art RACC
Center,
right, are gonna put together for this year. So people do mosaics, murals. We're really open, and so we look forward to seeing what kind of creative projects people can submit their ideas. And so just want to make sure that we have space in our projects for all different kind of art projects, and also some culture. So we're not just art, but we're art and culture. So if you're bringing in cultural projects, if you have festivals, if there are different ways that you're involved in the community around cultural arts projects, we're looking for those as well. So I am going to turn it over to Winifred, who's going to talk about the application itself, how we evaluate it, and how we select the applications that we want to offer grant awards to. So go ahead, Winifred.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So for those of you who just joined us, our agenda, sorry. Please, let me also say, please bear with us as far as the technical part is concerned. The content will be good. We don't have any technical assistance tonight, and I'm really good at some things. The technical assistance part is, I'll just let you know ahead of time. So bear with us. So as you can see, our agenda is, we've already done our welcome and introductions. We see that there are 13 people who are joining us. Welcome. So this evening, we only have an hour, so we're going to go over a cursory view of what's expected on both sides in terms of the project itself, the types of projects Lynson has already reviewed or shared with you. We want to talk about the application, the evaluation, selection process. We want to go a little bit over the budget. City manager, CMO stands for City Manager's Office. The staff person may or may not be able to join us, but whether she can join us or not, we'll still give you some information about the budget procedures. We'll talk about the contract approval process, a little bit about the interview presentations that will take place, and for those candidates who we feel we need additional information from. We'll talk a little bit about the liaisons, and those would be Arts and Culture Commission members who will be assigned to the awardees, if you will. We'll have a few minutes for Q&A and then some final comments. So I'm going to go right into it. And so, and like I said, bear with me. The content is here. So in terms of just the general information, we have all different types of projects that we'll be receiving. One of the main things that we want to highlight is the fact that the projects need to have some community inclusion and celebrate different neighborhoods all across the city. So initially, once the applications are submitted, there'll be a proposal review committee comprised of commissioners. There'll be 3 commissioners. Lynson will be one, and then there'll be a few others who will also review all the applications. We'll look at all the scores, and the top score winners basically will be considered for the awards. There's $65,000. That's part of the general fund on an annual basis. And if $9,000 is the maximum, you can do the math and divide 9 into 65 and figure out that there's not everybody who applies is going to be able to receive funding. Some of the projects, if they're specific to public art, some of the funds might come out of a different funding source as opposed to the general fund. So we may award more than $65,000 in total, just depending on how the projects, what type of projects are applied for. So staff will work with the commissioners and their liaisons. The liaisons are commissioners who will be assigned to each one of the finalists and help you work through your project to make sure that if you have any questions, they can be answered, and a little bit of hand-holding if it's necessary. But there are several people who have applied multiple times and they're familiar with the process, and many people do not need any additional help, but we're available for that. Number 3, the commissioner, we just mentioned that there will be about 3 people on the final review committee. Shawnee Johnson is a staff person who helps us make sure that all the contract documents are complete. And there are staff members who assist. But in general, the Arts and Culture Division is a division of 1 person, which is me. And we share the responsibility, as I mentioned, with other staff members. Once the contract is completed and executed, that would be the time that you would be actually working with a liaison. So as not to confuse any of the requirements of the city. And once staff receives all of the information that's needed, then we proceed from there. As far as the fiscal sponsors are concerned, in some cases, if for artists or applicants who've never applied before or don't necessarily have the business skills, if you will, they might work with a sponsor, which most likely would be a nonprofit. It does not have to be a nonprofit based in Richmond, but someone who can help you with the business aspects of the project so that you can focus on the actual art. Documents that will be required would include business licenses, but actually that's only for any projects over 10,000 in the past. Everyone required a business license, so we can strike that one. You will need a W-9, so we can make sure to account for from a tax perspective and accountability. We make sure to have the proper mailing address through the W-9, and we have a vendor supplemental questionnaire and an LLC disclosure form. These are aspects of the project that are required from the city. Everyone will most likely will require proof of insurance, especially if you're working with children. And if there's any liability kind of a circumstance for your project, you would have to have at least a short-term insurance policy. The scope of work needs to be clearly defined, and we want it to be as simple and clear as possible, so you don't have to write, just because it says you can write 150 words. If 100 is succinct, then you can shorten it and make sure that we have all the information that we need to be clear about what it is that you're saying that you want to do, what your purpose, your project purpose is, who you're going to serve, how many people, from a once again an accountability perspective. We're looking to look for what is considered to be measurable goals. So that would mean that if there are 10 people who are served by your project, you need to specify 10 people, or however many you think. But if it's like 1,000 people, then that chances are that may not be reasonable, depending on what type of project that you're working on. So we want to make sure that whatever you state is reasonable, but you can determine what's reasonable and what's not, and you'll need to just justify it in the language of whatever your scope of services is. The Liaison Review Committee will finalize or will review the budgets and the scope of work for each one of the finalists. Those liaison members will check to make sure that the outcomes and those listed measurable goals match. The proposed staff will hold a briefing. Some folks, especially once again, if you've never done this before, there will be some one-on-one opportunities for people to go over your application. We're going to try to leave a little extra time this year. We're starting much earlier than we have in the past for a variety of reasons, because we do have a limited number of staff folks who are working on these projects from the contract side, gathering all the information. It takes time. What we try to do here is lay out what the general procedure would be so that you can see all the things that happen after you actually submit your application. So we have a contract template that gets submitted to legal for what's called a RLO, a request for legal opinion, to make sure that legal is comfortable with your application. And if certain things don't match, then they'll let us know, and then we'll come back to you and ask for you to make corrections to your application. So once the staff receives all your insurance documents, then we have to wait for risk management to review, and that's a division like within the human resource department. Risk management reviews all the insurance documents to make sure that they're acceptable. Some folks need auto insurance. If you're having to drive your car on property of whoever you're doing the project for, it might be required. It may not be required for all projects. So basically we look at a case by case to determine what's required. But in general, these are the things that everyone is going to have. After the legal and risk management have signed off, then the contract is sent through DocuSign. So it's electronic for signatures, and you sign it on, you sign it first, and then we receive it, and then there are other signatures that have to happen on the city side, like city manager has to sign off on it and such. Purchasing division creates a purchase order and a contract number that will have to be on all your invoices. As far as invoices are concerned, this is a grant. So there are two payments for the grant. 50% is paid in the beginning and 50% is paid upon completion. The city clerk is the one who issues that what's considered as a fully executed contract. And once those fully executed contracts are complete, then that's the primary time that the liaison would be able to work directly with you. The grantee receives a copy of the contract, and in that letter, congratulations letter, basically, it would include the name of the liaison, the email, and the ways that you can reach out to them. And on the other side, the liaisons would also receive the same information about you, along with a copy of your contract, so they know exactly what it is that you're going to accomplish for your project. Let's see. So we're gonna, if it's okay with you, we're gonna wait until the end to go over the questions and answers. So make a note, and actually, if you could, in the chat, just to acknowledge that you have attended, if you can put your name and your email address, it will also allow us to communicate with you outside of this meeting and confirm, because some of the people who are signed up are people who heard about the project, but they weren't necessarily on the mailing list. So this will be a way for us to keep in touch and keep track of who's interested. So let me see. I'm gonna try to go. Okay, we're going to look at the application. Now, all of you hopefully received this flyer that has information about the NPA mini grants. Lets you know that this is the fiscal year for 24-25 for the grant cycle. So just so we're clear, the city council makes the funds available for this project in the new fiscal year. So that is after July the 1st. So we, in an ideal world, would prefer that you not start your project until after you have a fully executed contract. So there's no confusion about when you can submit invoices or anything. You could, some people start ahead of time, but we've found that it can cause some complications. So it would be better in an ideal world for you to wait until you have your fully executed contract before you actually start doing the work. In the past, we have asked, well, this grant has been happening for over 10 years. The typical grant cycle is from January to June. So it's a 6-month window. If your project needs more than 6 months, then you need to probably change the scope of services so that it can fit within that 6-month period. Now, there are some applicants who are able to have more than 6 months if, when we request the contract documents, you submit them as quickly as possible and your documents are as complete as possible. So what we've found is taking extra time is when people do not submit all of the accurate information. So we really need you to do your due diligence by making sure that your application is complete in all different ways, especially the budget page. What we have found is that some applications, the numbers don't match. So if the numbers don't match, then that slows the process down. So we really need you to make sure that you do, you have plenty of time to double check your numbers to make sure that they do in fact match. I see that there may be a question as I'm speaking. You can put your question in the Q&A, or please wait until we try to go through the whole process and hopefully we'll answer your question for you. So the purpose, once again, is to stimulate arts and culture in Richmond. Many cases, it's about beautifying a neighborhood. So it could be visual. It could have to do with literary arts. We know we have a poet who's joined us today, who might be working on a compilation of poems by children at different schools in Richmond, just as an example. Performing arts projects might be in conjunction with the East Bay Center for Performing Arts in terms of having a location for your projects. If you're working with a school or you're working with Performing Arts Center, you are going to need to have permission from those entities as part of your contract documents. If you're working with West Contra Costa County School System, you have to have your permission in writing from not only, let's say, the principal at the school, but you also might have to have a permission letter from West Contra Costa County School District. So we'll go into those details because that's not everybody needs that. So it just depends on what your project is. To apply, make sure you fill out the application by the deadline, which is February 18th for this particular project. So once again, all of you have received the application. So we're not going to go over the whole application because you guys have already read it. You can see this is we've already kind of summarized the different categories of what's eligible, the grant amounts, range. For those of you who are applying for just a small amount, we want you to consider the fact that you will have to pay for insurance, or may, or well, most likely have to pay for insurance. So $2,500, even though you may not need a lot, you might want to apply for more than what you need in order to cover the expenses that are associated with the project. And $9,000 is the maximum. So we just put the range of the lower end and the upper end, and then you decide how much you need. Once again, we mentioned that this is a grant. It's not a grant, just a random grant. It has to be specific. Sorry about all these extra notes here.
Could I just jump in and say,
yeah.
It sounds like we have a lot of requirements, but just know that Winifred is available, by phone or email. Send her any questions you might have. We're willing to work with applicants to make sure that the applications are complete and that you get your questions answered and that you provide us with the information that we need.
Thank you. And it's usually best to put your questions in writing. Yes. So the email addresses that are at the end of this application. And there's a lot of different ways that you can reach me, but to be honest with you, the phone is not the best way. We have to have a record of the questions, and that best way to do that is to have the information in writing. So once again, you'll receive 1/2 upon signing the contract. We'll provide you with an invoice template along with the liaisons who will be able to help you as needed. And then when you're finished with the project, there'll be certain reports that you have to submit. Basically, if you have photographs to document your project, there's a variety of ways that you can share the information with us so we know what you were doing while you were doing it and when you're finished with it. The eligibility, this is it's primarily for targeting Richmond residents. One of the things that we've found is that this would be considered as a small project, and that flyer indicates that we have 2 other projects that we're soliciting for now. One is a $250,000 mural project. So a lot of folks who are applying for this opportunity would not qualify for the larger opportunity. So what we've done is provided a small one, this is a small opportunity. There's a medium and a large opportunity, and maybe some folks actually will qualify for all 3, but today we're just talking about the NPA mini grant. As far as ineligibility, if you are a corporate entity, you're not eligible. If you are an employee or relative of an employee of the city of Richmond, or if you're a relative to one of the arts and culture commissioners or any elected official, you will not be eligible for this grant because it represents a conflict of interest. As far as the selection process is concerned, the applications are due once again on the 18th. So you still have a couple of weeks in order to complete your project. And all of this information is information that you have access to as well. Talks about how much money in total is awarded. As far as the selection process, it's committee by committee. There's a scoring rubric that we use to assign points based on the 4 criteria. Here's the criteria here. We're looking for a clear project description, artist experience, which may or may not be required for your project, because we assume that the mini grant might be for an emerging artist who's never done this before. So maybe you don't have experience, but you have a good, solid, clear description of your project. All the projects we expect to have community engagement of some sort. So just give you an example. We had someone asking if this is an artist who asked if they could have a grant to help fix their roof on their studio, and this is not for that. So read the application as read it as carefully as possible so that you understand what you're getting into, so to speak, as far as what's required. So once the points have been assigned, there'll, let's say, be a total of 20 points. So if the majority of, or if there are, let's say, 10 candidates who rate between 18 and 20, chances are those will be the folks that we focus the awards to, because their applications are complete and they have all the criteria that we're asking for that we've just spoke about. We have an oral proposal review for the majority of the candidates, especially if it's the first time that you're applying. For those applicants who have applied in the past, you may or may not have oral review, because we're already familiar with your project, and your application is most likely is complete. So the oral and in-person, well, actually, it might be a Zoom interview. We're not sure yet, but either way, those interviews basically would be only 15 minutes each. So you have to be very short and clear. You have 10 minutes to make your presentation and 5 minutes for a Q&A, and then we go on to the next person. So we have usually 2 to 4 evening sessions for these interviews. And even though 15 minutes doesn't sound like it's very much time, if you are clear about what you're proposing, then we only need a couple of minutes to hear what you have to say, if you will. So we also reserve the right not to select artists for this grant, depending on what the application is, but most of it's driven by the number of points that you receive. The application deadline, originally, for some of you, you may have noticed that we changed the date from the 18th to the 1st for this session tonight. Initially, it was going to be a mandatory orientation, and we changed that to just a regular orientation, just so that everybody, or as many people as possible, would be able to attend. The application is electronic, no paper submittals. The instructions are at the end of this process. So sometime between now and March, we'll take a couple of weeks to do the application review. And then in March, between March and April, we'll be doing interviews via Zoom most likely here between 6 and 8 in the evening. Once again, 15 minutes each. So that really doesn't give us, a whole lot of time to interview a whole lot of people. So that's why it will be based on your points and the scoring to determine how many people we actually need to interview. And then, and between April and May, we, after the interviews, if we have any extra questions about the scope of services, that will give us time to review, ask, obtain additional information, and make a final selection, so that by the end of June, we can present this information to City Council. So City Council can approve all of the awards. And in July, that's when we make the announcement about the awards. And usually August, between August and October, we would expect to receive all of the insurance documents, the scope of services, need to match all the things that we talked about before. We try to give you, plenty of time and give ourselves plenty of time as well, to make sure that we are as complete as possible with the documents. And then between October, it could be as early as October, but by June of 2025, all the applications, all of the grants need to be complete. The grant duration, once again, is about a 6-month window at a minimum. Now, what we might have to do in the future is stop at a certain point, because we found that some applicants, for whatever reason, are unable to complete all their documents or submit all their documents by a certain time, and we'll have to cut it off at a certain time. If you don't have all your documents in, we'll have to say thank you, but no thank you, and encourage you to apply next year. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So as far as the grant is concerned, the summary would need to have photographs or some kind of documentation so we know that the project is complete. In the past, pre-COVID, we had exhibits, but even though they say COVID is over, it's not. So we most likely are not going to have a public exhibit again, but we'll figure out a way to let people know how that all of the wonderful work that the applicants have completed, and we'll go from there. So these are some of the additional pieces of information that we kind of went over before that everybody's going to need to have in order to get an award. So I think all of this we kind of went over. And if it's private property, written permission is required. So if you have questions, make sure that you direct it to this email address. And if you want more information about the Arts and Culture Commission, then you can go online and actually go to the website and learn a little bit more about what we have been doing for over 20 years. Now, just as a point of information, I've only been in this position for a little over 3 years, and I'm still learning as we go, but I think we have some really outstanding applicants and are looking forward to a new round this year. So that's the general information. As far as the actual application is concerned, it is electronic. If it says 11:59 at 12 o'clock midnight, your application will be rejected. So make sure that you apply no later than 11:59 on the 18th. And it could be earlier than that if you wanted, but it just needs to make sure that your whole application is complete. So once again, you can see it's just a fill-in application. We want the basic information, pictures. If you have similar, if you're working on a project that is similar to something that you've already done before, and you have some photographs, then you can submit them. It is optional. So clearly optional means that if you have them, fine. If you don't have them, no worries. Supporting materials are things like press releases and that kind of thing. And then make sure you press the submit button when you're finished. And there we go. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So that goes over the application, the evaluation selection process. As far as the budget is concerned,
Oh, it says the chat is disabled. Can you make sure that it's working? People are saying they can't sign in. Although I see their information here.
Well, I'm not sure. So put any questions, or if as far as your information, you can put it in the Q&A, and we can pick it up from there. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not quite sure how to. I don't know how to change it. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Put it in the Q&A.
Yeah, put it in the Q&A, and we can pick it up from there. Okay. So we're just going to talk about the budget just briefly. Once again, we will be looking for your numbers to match. And there sometimes people submit an application, and then when the reviewers look at it, if the numbers don't match, then that means that it slows the whole process down. So we're hoping that you would review your own work before you submit it. So it makes it easier for you and faster for you on the other side. If we end up having to come back and ask you to resubmit information, clearly it slows the process down. We're looking for reasonable numbers. Typically, let's say if you have a $9,000 grant request, no more than 25% of your total should go towards paying yourself, so that you receive compensation for your time. And then the rest of the funds we expect to go to the art itself. That's really important because that's what this is all about, giving back to the community. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep on going. As far as the interview presentations the contract approval process, I actually already reviewed that.
Yep.
The interview presentations, kind of talked about it. Just to know that 15 minutes goes by really quick. 10 minutes for your presentation, 5 minutes for your Q&A. And we want it to be conversational, but it needs to be compelling, so that the reviewers are clear that your project sounds as exciting as you feel it is. So part of that has to do with being clear about whatever your scope of services are, whatever your schedule is. Make sure that, because a lot of times people will submit an application, and then after they get the award, they're like, well, I need more time. Well, if you make sure you consider that when you're doing your application, how much time is reasonable for you to have a complete project. Project support liaisons, we kind of talked about. Those are our commissioners who have selected your project because maybe it's aligned with whatever their skills or background might be, or there's a variety of reasons why they may have selected your project over another project. But at the end of the day, that will be the primary point of contact that you'll have, in addition to myself, to answer any questions that you might have. So with all that in mind, it's 7:40, so we are going to take some questions now, and I'm going to see how this is going to work. Oh, no, that's not it. Give me a second, sorry. Full screen. Okay, let's see how this goes.
Please put your questions in the Q&A box. if you
Yeah,
have
I think that would probably be the best thing to do.
Yes.
I'm trying to see how I can. Okay, let's see. Yeah, the chat may be disabled, sorry. Once again, just put your name in the Q&A and your email address. We can pick it up that way. Let's see, looks like
I don't see any questions.
I don't
yet.
see any questions either. Confirming appearance.
Can people raise their hands? There's a
Uh,
raise hand button. Can you?
Let's see. Well, I know that Cheryl had a question earlier. I don't know if your question was answered or not. But what I have to do is I need to switch you to, there we go.
Okay.
Cheryl, did you still have a question?
No, I just wanted you to know that the chat was disabled, so I put my stuff in the Q&A, and thank you for such a thorough presentation. I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Nita, did you have a question?
Not me, thank you.
Okay. Well, let me try to.
So outside of the 25% for self-payment, is there a limit to what it can go for? i.e. insurance, travel, outside services?
Well, we wanted to focus on the art itself. So in terms of travel, I mean, everyone, most of the folks who are applying are Richmond residents, so we're not looking to pay for an airline ticket or a hotel someplace. Any of that is not appropriate for the expenses for this project. I don't think that's what you're asking, but just as an example.
Just make sure that the expenses that you identify are related to the performance of your project. And we need to be able to see that when we're reviewing it. We're going to be looking at your budget, looking at the line items, seeing how you plan to spend your money. So we are going to have an eye on that. But insurance for sure. If you have to pay for insurance, that is an allowable expense.
A required expense.
It is a required, yes, it's required, so it's an allowable expense.
Okay, thank you very much for putting all your names, and looks like you got the.
Wondering about capacity building for a culminating event reception. Maybe, is it an art related project?
Yeah, this is the Richmond Arts Center, I think. Yeah, this is the Richmond Arts Center project. So the culminating, well, I think that's, once again, some of the questions are going to be case by case.
Yes.
So why don't we discuss it separately, Eileen, if that's okay with you. But the majority of the funds we're looking for to go directly to the beautification or some impact to the community at the end of the day. That's what we're looking for.
If you're raising up artists, so we've had projects where we're mentoring and creating opportunity for artists to grow as professionals. If that's what you're proposing, then that would be something that we would definitely be interested in. One of our goals is to provide opportunities for Richmond artists to grow as artists and professionals, as professional artists.
So one of the things that we've found is, once again, that some artists start the projects before the contract has been executed and they feel like, well, they're going to do the project anyway. Well, maybe that's the case, but we still have to follow from the city side, the rule that basically says that you need to wait until your contract is fully executed. So we know this past year that didn't necessarily happen with some of the projects, and it causes a little bit of a complication. So we want to avoid any complications. We want it to be as easy as possible. We don't want to have people putting money out on, taking money out of their own pocket before they can invoice. And we can't invoice a project until you have a fully executed contract. Once you do, and you receive 50% of your total, then that should be enough to pay for some of the expenses initially, knowing that you're not going to be paid for the other 50% until the end of the project. So you need to be responsible as far as how you spend your money and how you actually propose to spend your money as well. Is there anything else you want to add, Lynson?
Just that, as you're developing your project design, if you are going to need permissions from either private parties, or even if it's a city, it could be city property that you're interested in doing a mural on, for example. Or if you're going to need to be hanging banners, and we have to do public works. And so there's different pieces. So you need to sort of flesh out what your idea is, and to see who else needs to be involved in getting the permissions that you need in order for your project to fly. So, and the sooner that you do that, one of the things that's been holding up people's contracts is they don't get the permissions that they need to actually accomplish the project that they're proposing. So we want you to be thinking about that proactively as you're developing the design for your project. And the quicker you are able to submit the documentation that the city asks you for, and we have really been working hard through the commission and with the city manager's office to try to make the process as not simple as possible, because it isn't a simple process, but we want to make the process make sense, and we want to give people enough time to get in the documentation that they need. So we're trying to work with the artists to make the process manageable, so that you can get everything in that you need to get in, so that you can get that executed contract, because that's basically your bottom line. That's your goal. So when you have that executed contract, then you're ready to do your project. So, and if you have any questions, make sure that you let Winifred know what your questions are, so that she can give you the guidance that you need. We'll also have the review committee. So we have the first committee reviews all the applications, and then we have a smaller committee that's actually going to be the committee that's going to work with the city manager's office and the potential grantees, the awardees, so that we can make sure that we have information correct, that we have paperwork correct, all of that. So we're going to try to support this process as much as we can from our side, and we just need you to make sure that you do the things that you need to do from your side.
So because we have a couple of minutes, what I was wondering if we could call on a couple of folks who have received awards in the past, so they could share maybe, small experience. Cheryl, would you be comfortable doing that?
Sure. I'm Cheryl Mayer, and I supported the Senior Circle Art Project that was coordinated by Miss Doris Mason, who is the Neighborhood Council Vice President in the Iron Triangle. And she pulled together about a dozen seniors who had weekly art lessons from one of the RACC artists who was able to teach and guide seniors in arts and crafts. And it became not just an art project, and we had an exhibit at Lydia's restaurant last year, but it was also a vehicle for bringing seniors together, bringing them out, bringing them to the Nevin Community Center, which is City of Richmond property, and giving them, a vehicle for exchange and for socialization and for learning. And it became a very important vehicle within the Nevin Community Center for serving seniors. And the Arts Commission and Winifred Day made that all possible, and we really appreciated it.
Thank you very much. Mark, are you able to speak up? Are you still there? Mark Anthony? Oh, his audio is enabled. Oh, okay. Well, Mark Anthony has worked with the Police Activities League, teaching a musical instrumental classes to students, doing an outstanding job. So some of his funds basically goes towards purchasing new instruments. And they are able to build their instrument collection over time. So every year, like if it was a guitar class, it's not just one guitar for the whole class that one kid has to watch another kid, play and wait their turn. Now they have a couple of instruments, and over time, the idea is that they will be able to build their inventory. Eileen, can you share your Richmond Arts Center experience in the past? Let's see.
Cheryl and Anita.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I'd like you to answer the question live if you could.
Oh, she can't open her mic. Can you open her mic, Eileen's?
Now, this is the fun of a webinar instead of the meeting. Not sure. But we can just give an example of the project for the Richmond Arts Center for this current year is to support a retrospective of John Worley's artwork. He's a muralist. Many of you may be familiar with him, but has never been celebrated in this kind of way. So it's a huge exhibit. So another part of this is that maybe your project needs more than the amount of money that we have available. So you would have the opportunity to solicit funds from other sources also. It's not, don't only depend on the city for your funding. That's something to consider. So let's see.
I think in order for them to talk, you have to promote them.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm in the wrong place. That's why. Okay, here we go. Okay, Eileen, can you hear me now?
I can. And
Yay! Okay.
thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. Unfortunately, that project was being facilitated by Roberto Martinez, who was the former exhibitions director here at the RACC. And he is still currently working on this project with John Worley as a consultant. He's also working with the East Side Alliance in East Oakland.
Okay.
But yes, this project is near and dear to our heart. We're always talking about it here, and it has been quite a big experience with John Worley's retrospective.
Is there another project that you could talk about from the past?
Yes, I'm familiar with this one, and then I believe that there were a series of I want to say the Fence Lines project that we did in spring with our family day, and our theme was clean air. We partnered with an exhibiting artist collective called Fence Lines, who invited community in, really created a whole different kind of space for community in the RACC and the courtyard. It was a very family oriented impact, and people from all over Richmond came to participate. And it wasn't for just one family day. I think they did a repeat of their event over a series of months over the year, and it was always packed and very, very energetic. And event, I mean, the culmination of which was the exhibit that was taken down. I think a lot of people may already know about this. I don't know how much you want me to say.
Not too much.
Okay, I will wrap it up. It was great.
Thanks. All I could say to comment on that is that for any projects that potentially have some political challenges, you really want to pay attention to that. We are trying to avoid any projects that people would have any conflict with. But you know, art is art, and sometimes it's going to not everybody will agree with whatever your art project is. So we want to make sure that we respect differences of opinion, I guess would be the short way of putting that. But thank you very much, Eileen. Let's see if there's someone else who might want to share. If I recognize the names, I'm going to call it on you. Looks like we have a couple of commissioners also. Maybe I'll invite Ted and Virginia. Teddy, you were a panelist last year. Can you hear?
Hey, Winifred.
Hi, Ted. Can you share your experience as a panelist last year? Ted is art commissioner. Mm-hmm.
It was, well, good evening, everyone. It was a very great experience. Just knowing the interest within the city of Richmond and getting to know artists of all ethnicities and of all age groups. So that was really encouraging and enlightening. And I think one of the things that we're also trying to work on is just educating the artist and encouraging them to continue the striving to be the best artists that they can possibly be for themselves as well as the community. So for those of you who may submit, you know, your application and maybe that application does not go as you had hoped it would, we still want to encourage you to learn from the experience, but also keep striving and learning as you go. And we will work with you so that you can, you know, get that artwork out.
Thank you. I'm going to see if I can open up Mark's mic. Mark Anthony. Let's see if this works. Mark Anthony, can you test in 1, 2, 3?
Hello there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I just wanted to say you guys have done a great job throughout all of these years. You know, you guys have inspired me to kind of expand my music program to include kids with disabilities. My nephew is he's a warrior, but he has dyslexia. And so now I'm including kids that have learning challenges and they are thriving. Like, it's just amazing how they're thriving. So all of the other parties online and the attendees online, these programs they're just wonderful because the partnerships with the city of Richmond is just unbelievable. And but it's a lot of work. You got to put the work in. You have to show the work that you're doing. And besides that, you know, the community outreach that we have and the partnerships that we have in the community is really important as well.
Mark. Well, on that note, it's about 8. It is actually 8 o'clock exactly. So I think hopefully you received the basic information that you needed to encourage you to apply. You still have a couple more weeks. If you have questions about your application or the concept that you were considering, once again, you should reach out to me via email, and on the flyer that you received and the actual application, you have all of my contact information. So once again, we are hoping that you'll be as succinct as possible. We don't need you to write a whole dissertation. We don't want you to write a whole dissertation. We want you to be clear, and so that the folks who may not be familiar with your project, when they read it, it's understandable. So on that note, if you don't mind, we're going to stop and thank you and hope that you have a good evening. And I think I think we got all the questions. I'm sorry we had a few technical difficulties here, but hopefully there was enough information to encourage you to apply. And once again, if you have additional questions, then make sure that you reach out to me, and good luck to you. So thanks again. You all have a good evening. Okay.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to your applications.